It's Friday on Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Happy to be back for the final regular show, at least for the week. Been a lot of stuff this week, lots of extra Twins podcasts, and of course the Twins play again Saturday and Sunday. Still trying to figure out how to handle the weekend slate. I'm leaning towards doing some sort of bonus episode after Game 1. But probably not after Game 2. That's a Sunday night game, and we'll be on with Royce early Monday anyways, so probably not a special episode after Game 2, but plenty to talk about with Royce on Monday right away. Probably a lot of that dealing with what we saw in Game 2 from the Twins, so stick around for that this weekend and for a good show right now. It's going to be a little bit of a show in reverse. I'm going to kind of get to the what did I miss in a little bit. I talk a little bit of Cam Akers, who I had a chance to catch up with, new Vikings running back, a couple of days ago. I got to talk Minnesota United because that team is sputtering to the finish line. Maybe dissect a little bit of what's going wrong with them. First, though, is not really what did I miss. I'm gonna do the interview right away because Phil Miller from the Star Tribune joins me here, and all you guys really want to talk about is Twins right now. I'm getting that from everything that's going on right now. The Vikings pushed down, go for football pushed down, even though both of those teams have big games this weekend. All that really matters right now is Twins in the playoffs, Game 1 at Houston on Saturday afternoon. So let's get to me and Phil Miller talking Twins, that series, and what's coming up right now.
What else would we talk on Daily Delivery except for Twins? That is all that's on almost everyone's mind. No better person to talk about them than Phil Miller, Twins beat writer for the Star Tribune. Phil didn't know what to expect in these playoffs because of the history, of course, but Twins advance through Toronto fairly easily, comfortably. I mean, the games were tight, but you never really got the sense that, at least I didn't, that things were going the other way, at least once you got to the late innings. And now on to Houston, Phil, a much different task, a lot of different questions. Biggest one has to be who's the Game 1 starter, and there's a lot of options there, aren't there?
There are. It was interesting to me that they finally confessed that the Twins don't like to announce plans ahead of time, but Joe Ryan was going to start Thursday afternoon's Game 3. That's such a big responsibility. You just assume that, okay, well, now you just push him back and he's the Game 1 starter if you have that much trust in him. So I asked Derek Falvey today, can we just assume Joe is the Game 1 starter? And he said, no, I wouldn't. They are reflexively cautious about committing to things. So it could have been that, or it could have been in analyzing a completely different team and a completely different set of tendencies that maybe Kenta Maeda, who did not pitch in this series, excuse me, might be someone they look at. Bailey Ober, pitched very, very well in Colorado, and might they look at him? It was interesting to me that they pulled back on that. Like I say, they don't like to announce things much in advance, so maybe this is just nothing. Joe Ryan threw in the bullpen today. I watched him a little bit from the press box, and so he is certainly acting as though he is the Game 1 starter, and perhaps they do something where they tell him once through the lineup, twice through the lineup, and then we'll think about like Kenta. But you don't want to map that out too much, as the Blue Jays learned last night.
Yes.
So it was interesting to me that they were going to give him Game 3, but are now maybe. And I know there are people in the organization who think Kenta is the best option. Kenta Maeda is the best option now. So we'll see what they decide.
And ultimately, then, where they go from Game 1 is a little bit more cut and dried. Pablo Lopez would have his full rest for Game 2. Sonny Gray would have 5 days of rest for Game 3. But then you're back to a conundrum of who out of that mix would get a Game 4. That would be at Target Field if necessary, assuming it's 2-1 in either direction at that point. But better options, I would say, overall than they've had in past years. Although, of course, in past years, they've never needed more than 3 in any of these series because they haven't gotten past 3 games in any series for a long time. So, but, 5 capable starters, I would think, in at least, and this has been the strength of the team all year. The problem is Houston has 3 really good starters, and they are ready to roll because they've just been sitting there idly for a handful of days now, and they will start with Justin Verlander, who, in addition to the Pohlads, he is a co-owner of the Twins. He's been pretty dominant against them, but different Verlander, different Twins. Still, there's that history, and he's awfully good both this year and almost every year.
22 career wins against the Twins. No pitcher has struck out more Twins this century than Justin Verlander. So, I don't know how familiar this particular set of Twins are with him, but certainly he has a real history with them. I should point out in the Twins pitching maneuvers that you might think, would they want to give Pablo an extra day or something like that? But Pablo Lopez pretty much is locked into game 2 because that allows him with 2 days off in between the games here to pitch game 5. And that's your best possible scenario. So Pablo for sure is going to go Sunday. The challenge to face Verlander, even if he's not the Cy Young winner that he once was, still looms large.
Yeah, and they're good right after that too, and they've got all sorts of postseason experience. I mean, the Twins went into that Blue Jays series with a certain kind of raised profile. They were, I think, a lot of people saw them as at least a little bit better than even chance to win that series. This Astros series feels different. I have to say, I don't know how comforted they are that Carlos Correa, the former Astro, keeps comparing this team to the 2015 Astros because, spoiler alert, guys, the 2015 Astros lost the ALDS in 5 games. I don't know if they love that comparison so much. They did, however, go on to go to 4 World Series, winning 2 of them. If the Twins could do that, I'm sure they'd take it, although I think they would like to do that without the horrible cheating scandal that makes everybody hate them.
Yes, I am interested in what Carlos Correa uses for fuel when the crowd's not booing him every time he's introduced. And it's interesting because Carlos has mentioned, and Dallas Keuchel went into some detail about that 2015 team. They thought they had the Royals on the ropes, and they were up 2-1 in a best of 5. They were up by 3 or 4 runs in the 7th or 8th inning, and the Royals just kind of suddenly couldn't make an out anymore, and the roof kind of fell in on the Twins. On the Astros, and it was Keuchel said it was a real good example that of their youth catching up to them. I think Correa's point is that they're as good as the Astros, and they have veteran Carlos Correa in the lineup and not rookie Carlos Correa.
And veteran Carlos Correa, I mean, for all that was said about him this year, and, obviously the foot injury played a big part of his offensive struggles, he was always very good in the field during the regular season, makes, 3 of the biggest plays of the entire series. Obviously the barehanded play in game 1 to keep the Blue Jays off the board. The pickoff that he orchestrated, you wrote about that. I love that. Just, using the crowd noise, kind of tipping Sonny Gray after that in the first inning that, hey, this could be there. And then, of course, the only run-scoring hit of that game Wednesday to give them that win. So he's showing that he's definitely a guy you want on your team this time of year, even if he didn't have the greatest regular season.
Mike, you remember when we were in Houston in June, taking an Uber to the airport, and the Uber driver was telling me that Carlos Correa, man, sometimes you don't even know he's on the team during the regular season, but we have never seen anybody in October like Carlos Correa, which might be a little overstated, but certainly Carlos says the same thing, that I'm not the same player. He said yesterday, "This is why I'm here. This is what I do. This is my time of year." And it's one thing to say it, but then the very first two games, all we're talking about is Carlos Correa. Making an incredible defensive play, making a savvy observation that probably got them out of the biggest jam of the game, and for all his strikeouts and double plays this year, he got the big hit when they needed it last night. Which, they're fortunate. I looked it up. The Twins won only 13 times this year. They were like 13 and 32 or 3 when they didn't hit a home run. And they did it last night. Didn't hit a home run and still pulled out a win. There's some questions about whether or not the Twins offense can kick it into gear. But certainly Carlos Correa seems like he has.
Those are valid questions. I mean, the one guy who got it going in game one, the only guy really that got it going in game one, Royce Lewis, still battling that hamstring. Any indication of is DH kind of the plan still? Because gotta say, Phil, you talked about the concerns about the offense, and I want to circle back on that in a minute, but I got concerns about the infield defense when Royce Lewis is not at third base, because all of a sudden Polanco's at third. He had 4 or 5, either error plays or misplays in the first 2 games of that series that really could have hurt them if not for, others pitching and Correa covering for him. I still don't love Julian at second base. I know some of the metrics say he's gotten better there. What do we know about Lewis and his availability to whether it's in the field or DH for this next series?
Well, it might not shock you to hear that he's optimistic, because
he's always optimistic. Yeah.
Royce is optimistic about everything. I would be surprised if we see him on the field in Houston. I do think they will use him as DH. And you're right about the defense. They also played Donovan Solano when there's a left-hander in the game, and so that's not their best option at first base either. I'm a little surprised at how difficult it's looked for Jorge Polanco at third base, because he's got a lot of experience on the left side of the infield at shortstop, but those were a couple of fairly routine for a third baseman, fairly routine plays that he had trouble with. So, but I don't know what the solution is other than playing Kyle Farmer there. As long as we saw Royce, he hit a ground ball that went foul that he had to run out.
Yeah,
and then he hit another ball that he had to run out and right back to back. And he's not fast down the baseline. I don't know if he's just protecting it or if it's snagging him. But either way, I don't know how the Twins can take a risk. Not when their ambition is to play 3 more weeks. You need to have him around. So, and taking Jorge out of the lineup, it's a team that got out hit in both games. They had 12 hits in the 2 games. I don't know how you weaken your lineup. So it's a balancing act. The solution is Royce to get healthy and come back. But I would be surprised if it happens this weekend. We'll see about next week at Target Field.
Okay. Well, we'll see about that. A couple more things, Phil, then I'll let you go. You talked about the offense. I mean, one streak that continued, you told me before we started recording, that's 17 straight postseason games where they have been held to 4 runs or fewer. I think that probably takes us back to Game 4 in 2004 when they scored 6. Or
right. That the last game of the playoffs in 2004 is the last time they scored more than 4 runs in a postseason game, which kind of explains the losing streak that is finally over. But while they broke the losing streak of 18 games and the streak of series loss. They scored 5 runs in 2 games. It's different that they have the pitching where that's enough now, but boy, it's a lot of pressure to put on the pitching. It's a lot of pressure to put on the bullpen, and the bullpen has been so good the last couple of weeks. The guys that are on the roster gave up 2 runs in their last 17 innings of the regular season. And then, of course, none in the 2 games against the Jays. But wow, that's a lot of pressure to put on. And the Astros are, I think, are going to be a bigger challenge at the plate. So they're not out of the woods yet. It is amazing how easy it is to gloss over what you saw in when you win the games. But the game where Royce Lewis hit 2 home runs, that was the only extra base hits that they had the entire night. So there's if you're a pessimist Minnesota fan, and I don't know if there are those creatures exist, right?
No, just a couple.
There is plenty to worry about because the offense has not certainly not broken out the way it had in August and September.
Well, maybe the optimist would say there's plenty of runs still left in those bats, Phil Miller, although I would say you're right. It wasn't just that they only scored 5 runs. So they didn't even had a lot of scoring opportunities. There was a couple chances like late in I think a couple of those games they had a couple runners on where they could have padded their lead. I think they maybe had a bases loaded at bat with Jeffers the other day where they could have, maybe got it to 4 or 5 runs, but not even a lot of scoring opportunities. They're going to need a lot more of those against Houston because I don't think it's going to be first 1 to 3 to win many of those games against Houston.
Last night wasn't quite so bad. They did leave a couple of runners on third base and a couple of runners on second base. So it wasn't totally bad, but it's a team that is built with the postseason formula of home runs and strikeouts. They want to hit home runs and strike out opposing batters. They led the American League, in both categories this year. So it is a winning strategy in postseasons past. The team that hits the most home runs. It sounds simple, but the team that hits the most home runs invariably wins postseason games. So it happened. It happened on Tuesday. They got a win anyway on Wednesday, and they do need to find a way. Those Crawford boxes in down the left field line in Minute Maid Park. We'll see if they can reach those a few times because that's the formula for winning.
It is indeed. Well, first pitch, Saturday afternoon, Sunday night, and then Tuesday afternoon. Those are the game times we know. First 2 in Houston, game 3 at Target Field, 4 if necessary at Target Field. Phil Miller, appreciate it. As always, we'll be following your coverage. I'm sure we'll talk again soon because who knows? Maybe this thing is an actual postseason run and not just a couple wins.
Yeah, that's there's certainly that feeling in the clubhouse, which, by the way, smells like champagne and beer.
There could be worse things. Thanks, Phil.
Yeah. Okay, Mike.
I think an interesting thing about the Astros is that, like the Blue Jays, the Twins played them 6 times this year. They played them quite well. They were 4-2, but they haven't played for like 4 months. Both of these teams very different from the teams they were 4 months ago. And the Astros, the Twins, did not face any of the Astros' 3 best pitchers, the guys that they'll go up against in this series, including Justin Verlander in Game 1. So I almost feel like, yeah, the 4-2 is nice. Yeah, it was part of a year where the Twins fared much better against good competition than they have in previous years. But I don't put a whole lot of stock in that, I guess, than I would if they had, just taken 2 out of 3 weeks ago, and both teams were fighting for playoff position, things like that. So something to watch for in this series. I think it's going to be a good series. I think the Twins have a chance to win this series, even with some of the odds that are stacked against them. You now have to go on the road now. The game 1 pitching matchup's not going to be in their favor, although I think the Twins will be able to throw a capable arm out there, whether, like Phil said, it's Joe Ryan, whether it's Kenta Maeda, whether it's Bailey Ober. That I don't know. And they're going to have to throw one of those other guys in Game 4 if there is indeed a Game 4. But other than that, the pitching lines up pretty well. And if they can get a little bit more offense, I think that's one of the concerns. They didn't show a whole lot of offense against good Blue Jays pitching. Can they show a little bit more against Houston? Racing to 3 is probably not going to do it most of the time, especially in that small ballpark in Houston. Can they score more runs to complement that really good pitching? If they can win this series, get to the ALCS, and then anything is possible.
Grand Casino would like to take a moment and salute the true football fan. The passion, the hope, the anticipation, that incomparable feeling of winning. Grand Casino would also like to take a moment to remind you that you can find all that anticipation, thrill, and winning at Grand Casino. Grand Casino. Let your story begin.
Like I mentioned at the jump, I had a chance to catch up with new Vikings running back Cam Akers, a mid-season trade, early season trade, I guess. We're not in the middle of the season, but Vikings adding Cam Akers after some shaky early performances on the ground, and they looked much better. Cam Akers makes his real Vikings debut last weekend against the Panthers. And again, not the world's greatest run defense, not the world's greatest team, and those are understatements, but Cam Akers rushes 5 times for 40 yards, does a lot with his touches, with his limited action. Seems like he's going to be a good complement to Alexander Mattison, giving the Vikings kind of a 1-2. It's not like their skill sets are vastly different, but Akers is maybe built a little bit lower to the ground, good at finishing through contact, and has a little bit more, maybe a slightly more big play ability than Alexander Mattison. But he showed himself well in that first game. We'll see if they can keep that going against Kansas City, because that takes a lot of pressure off Kirk Cousins. It just does. He doesn't have to make all of the throws anymore, doesn't have to convert all of the things. He's on pace to throw a lot of passes this season, even after only throwing 19 last weekend. So here is Cam Akers. I just had a chance to talk to him alone in the locker room for a couple minutes earlier this week, just kind of on the adjustment and what he brings to this team.
What's it like just stepping into a brand new situation in the middle of the season? Like, how's that feel?
I'm blessed to be able to know a lot of what to be able to have known a lot of what I was stepping into. Yeah. Offensively. So I guess that make it a lot easier knowing a few people also, like, personally around the building. I think it make it a lot easier to just come in and play ball instead of having to come in and learn a whole new offense or whatever. So I think that helped me a lot.
I mean, just like you walk in and you're like, you're just wearing a new uniform, you're going into a new stadium, all of a sudden a new role on a new team. Like, I just feel like it's got to be a lot of adjustment.
No. I mean, obviously, like, the move, that's probably like the worst part of it, but like getting here and learning the plays and stuff, it wasn't an adjustment.
How'd you feel like Sunday went?
I feel like it went good. I feel like I got my feet wet personally, if you're talking about me.
Yeah.
As a team, obviously it went good. We got a W. Got work to do. Obviously, we want the cleanest W, but we got the W. We'll take it any way we can.
When you're at your best, what do you bring to the table?
When I'm at my best, what do I bring to the table?
Yeah. In your own words.
A major threat on the field, a home run threat on the field, big play threat, whether it's catching, running, block, whatever, I bring attention I bring attention. That's a good way to put it. I bring attention on the field. Got to respect me if we talking about me. You got to respect me and what I can do. I think teams do.
And again, this is a guy who's only 24 years old, a former second-round pick in 2020. He's got talent. He's got relatively fresh legs, only 365 career carries. So it's a guy that I imagine, as long as he stays healthy this season with the Vikings, is going to get a fair amount of work. I'm not saying he's going to supplant Alexander Mattison in the backfield, but this definitely feels like it's headed towards more of a timeshare. maybe not a 50-50 split, but like a 60-40, something like that, where he's going to get a couple series at least per game. And if he has the hot hand, they might ride that. And that's a nice player for them to have if they don't have full faith yet in Ty Chandler or any of their other young running backs. That is a big deal for them because they need to get that running game going on a more consistent basis. Vikings trying to win for the first time at home this season. They're 0-2. Speaking of a team that has been terrible at home so far this year, Minnesota United. What has happened to Adrian Heath's Loons down the stretch? You know, I talked to him probably a month ago or so as they were kind of entering this critical stretch of the season. And, you know, he was like, if we can win 5 of these games, something like that, get a good result in 5 of these games, we'll be in good shape. They have not done anywhere close to that, the latest being a 5-1 loss to LAFC on Wednesday. Playoff probability down to 4%, according to the websites I look at, going into these final 2 matches of the season. They're hanging by a thread. They're trying to make the playoffs for the 5th straight year. That is a rarity. I believe they're the only Western Conference team that's made it all 4 years. But something's not right here, and it kind of boils down to 2 things. One, at home this year, they've been bad, especially scoring goals, and they've been giving up a lot of late equalizers, games where they should have had 3 points, getting 1, games where they should have had 1, getting 0. And that's just caught up to them. You can't give away points at home. There's been too many games this season where they haven't finished their chances at home. Their expected goals, things like that, way higher than their actual goals. And this is just a perpetual problem. Seemed like they had kind of figured it out at a certain point of the season, and then they went right back to their old form. And when you can't add on, when you're clinging to those 1-0 leads, inevitably, and in case of the Loons, almost always they are giving up that equalizer when the pressure builds, and they are getting these draws, and that's where you're really seeing them fall in the standings. I mean, the other problem is more kind of personnel or stylistic. We see fans complain on X, Twitter. It's still Twitter to me all the time about their fullbacks, about who they're playing, about who Heath is playing. On the back line, I think against LA, it was kind of this more of the same old stuff. It was Taylor and Bristow in that game. Fullbacks who have had their struggles this year, to say the least. But I don't know what the other options are. I mean, for the style they want to play, it doesn't really seem like they have a lot of other great options right now. So part of it's a matter of the guys they have playing better, and part of it's a matter of, maybe shaking things up when things still aren't quite hopeless. But it is getting hopeless right now. It makes you wonder where things are headed after this year. Do they just chalk this up to wrong mix? Do they start to think about making some more wholesale changes? Because, even when they've been making the playoffs, they've been kind of that fringe team a lot of times where they don't seem really, really dangerous. And again, this season was weird. You had the whole Emmanuel Reynoso thing at the start of the year where he missed time. He was away. Then it took him a little while to get back into full fitness, things like that. So it's definitely been a year where they've been missing, Robin Lodge for a lot of the year. So some of their best players haven't been here for the full time. I get that. But if you're counting on a year, if you're waiting for a year where everything comes together, where everybody is healthy and available at the same time, that's just not how sports work these days. You're always going to need depth. You're always going to have these moments where you need to overcome things. I don't think they've done as good a job this year of overcoming as they have in past years. So where that leads them in the future, I'm not sure. Where it leads them in the present, it seems almost certain, unless some sort of Hail Mary miracle happens in these last 2 games. It means they're going to miss the postseason for the first time in quite some time, since 2018. Let's finish with the cooler. Wolves won in Abu Dhabi. I don't know how much to make of this, but the starters look good. A lot of them in plus territory. They beat Dallas. Dallas looks like they're still trying to figure things out early. Kyrie Irving, a minus 22 in 14 uninspired minutes for the Mavericks. It's just the first preseason game, but you would rather see a team play well in its first preseason game, even if it doesn't matter, than play poorly, and the Wolves certainly played well in that game. You've seen all sorts of footage, too, of what they're up to in the desert. Rudy Gobert riding a camel. You can see lots of this on the Wolves' social media. Players trying to take as much advantage of being over there as possible. They've got one more game in this Abu Dhabi series, and then they head back, I believe, Sunday for more of their regular training camp. It's just weird for them to be here for a bit, then gone for so long, but they'll be back soon enough. And once, whenever this Twins season ends, and for their sake, and probably for ours. It's fun to talk about a team that's winning for their sake and ours. Hopefully that's not for a few weeks anyway. But we'll see. Once that's done, it'll be right around the start of the Wolves and Wild season, I would imagine. Vikings will be in full swing. Everything's, everything in its due time. But right now, Wolves already starting their preseason, Wild in their preseason, Wolves over in Abu Dhabi, and they did get that win in their first preseason game. That will do it, like I said, for today. Should be some bonus content this weekend. I don't know what shape that will take off of Game 1 quite yet in Houston, but seems like the timing works out pretty well to do something off of that game before that Sunday night game in Game 2, and then just roll with the regular lineup of Royce on Monday and go from there. Probably some special episodes at least off of Games 3 and 4 if necessary next week. So another busy week coming up, but a fun week. Hey, we haven't gotten to talk about Twins winning in the playoff for almost 2 decades. We might as well take advantage of it. That will do it for me. I'm Michael Rand, back at it again later on.